Good morning, all you grinders out there. Happy Monday. Thanks for listening to the show, and welcome. I am here with Chris Breyer. How you doing, Chris?
I'm pretty awesome.
Today
I'm better than most, but not quite as good as some.
All right. So today we are doing the first remote show over the phone. Hopefully this turns out pretty decent. To me, it sounds pretty good. Hopefully it sounds good to the rest of you, too.
Yeah. Definitely. Now, like I said, I am in my garage with the garage door open, and I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm. So if you hear a rattle, really, I don't have gas. It's the thunder.
Well, I've got all my windows and doors open because it's pretty darn hot in my apartment. So.
Yeah, I bet.
So, Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
So, let's see. Charlie actually got us in touch because you have worked with him before.
Yeah.
Or you still do at the moment, correct?
I still do. I still do work with him now.
Oh, okay.
Which is good because everybody needs some comedy relief, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Are you talking about you or Charlie? Because Charlie's pretty funny.
He is, and I like poking at him sometimes. So
there you go. So, Chris, how about we start with, what was your first job, your first paying job where you actually had to pay taxes?
Oh, I had to pay taxes. Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
I mean, you can go first under the table job if you want. That's interesting.
Well, yeah. So under the table, I started doing stunt work when I was 15.
Stunt work. Like construction?
No, stunt work.
Oh,
like
stunt
falling
work.
off. Yeah, like being knocked off of horses and that kind of stuff, you know.
Huh.
And I did Western stunt work for about 12 years.
Wow.
And so that was under the table type of stuff. I wouldn't join the union, so I got a lot of the shows where they wanted people to come out and do live shows or do parades and do documentaries and that kind of stuff, which is okay. I was happy with that, but that beat me up pretty good.
Yeah, I bet. Getting thrown off of horses and stuff all the time.
Yeah, and fast draw expeditions and that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of fun.
So you're talking about just like a scripted, just Western show for fun, or are you doing, like war recreations and reenactments and stuff like that?
Yeah, not really reenactments. Well, I mean, anything you do from that is kind of a reenactment. But we would do skits, shows, kind of like what you see at Knott's Berry Farm on the road.
Oh yeah.
We did it on camera as well. And we did a lot of gun safety stuff, and hey, kids, don't do this at home. What you see on TV, that kind of stuff, because it does hurt. A lot of people got hurt, and a lot of people got killed doing stunt work.
Yeah.
And even though there's safety stuff and precautions, there's still accidents. I mean, I shot a guy in the calf with a blank, went in about 2 inches, left a hole about the size of a quarter.
Wow.
And that was with a blank.
Huh. Well, because the blanks still have a packing in them, don't they?
Well, they do. They have a wadding, and through the years, we've changed waddings and found, and this is kind of interesting because we would load our own. We used a florist foam, that green little weird foam they would put flowers in flower pots.
Yeah.
And we would use that as a wadding because it would disintegrate as soon as that fired, it would disintegrate. We had some people and other organizations. They would use stuff like toilet paper, which would catch fire as it left the barrel. They would use wax to seal it, and wax. And here's one thing that happened. It was really tragic. Is I knew this kid on this other side, and he was using wax, which isn't smart because the wax builds up in the barrel, even though it's minimal, but it does melt, and it bored his. He never cleaned his gun, and the wax built up in the barrel to where it caused a backfire, and the shotgun actually blew open in his face and laid his nose open like a hinge.
Wow.
And it was pretty tragic. And, of course they were able to fix it and everything, but, hey, blanks still hurt, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw in Wallace, where I grew up at, they used to do every year during, I think it was during the Lead Creek Derby. They call it gyro days and stuff, but they would have, it was like a Western shootout, deal where they would have some guys dress up in like Union and Confederate clothing and just do like a little, like 10-minute, shootout. And I always thought that was odd because you'd see the little paper things shooting out of the guns.
Yeah. And, and those got to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And like if you're using black powder, you've got to be about 20 feet away so you don't feel that powder. It takes a long time for black powder to burn. And it burns as it's flying through the air.
Yeah.
So, but my cousin did Civil War reenactments, and I always enjoyed those.
Yeah, I always thought that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, I used to do stuff like get shot off horses and that kind of stuff. And I grew up with horses on a ranch and everything. So, falling off horses came natural.
So where are you originally from?
Well, gosh, I lived in Manhattan Beach till I was 12, and we kept our horses up at Palos Verdes Estates in the Los Angeles area. And it got to the point to where we had so many horses, we got tired of the drive back and forth. So we just moved out to Norco, which is now called Horsetown, USA. And we bought a lot of property out there. We had some cattle and pigs and all of our horses and stuff. Trained horses, showed horses. So basically, I tell people I basically grew up in Norco. And then, from there, when I moved out, I actually took a job at one point running a ranch up in the mountains of Southern California, San Bernardino Mountains. And I had 75 acres, and I had horses. I was in charge of 50 head. I trained horses. I took people on rides. I taught riding lessons. I got certified as a master's certification in equestrian studies. And so that was fun. That was a good life for a long time.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I got rid of my last horse about 20 years ago. The horses are like kids. If you don't have time to put into it, you don't have them. That's simple.
Yeah. Well, I think pretty much all animals are that way, except for maybe house cats. But dogs are the same way. But, if you can't spend time with them, then it's not really fair to them. So.
Right, and with house cats, you don't own cats. They own you.
Yeah.
I mean, scratch my belly. Okay.
House cats are little self-centered assholes.
Oh yeah. You gonna try to talk about it. You gonna try to talk to it on one session about narcissism. Well, there you go. A cat.
Yeah. House cats are the animal epitome of narcissism.
Yeah. So because I didn't do stunt work for actual wages, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I worked with some great people, met some fantastic people. One person I met, I really enjoyed. His name was Larry Randalls, and he was actually Robert Blake's stunt double. And we had a lot of fun together. And back in you probably don't remember, back in the 70s, early 80s, they had television commercials for STP, where Robert Blake was out riding a horse, and he talked about STP motor oil. And it was like, wasn't Robert Blake.
It's before my time, but I know I've seen it.
Yeah, I think YouTube and stuff like that. But Robert Blake couldn't ride a horse to save his life, so of course he had to have Larry come out and do that. But I'll tell you, one time we did a show at a rodeo. This back then, the PRCA was called the IRA, the International Rodeo Association, and they wanted someone to do a halftime show. And so they got a hold of this organization. They got a hold of us, and we went out and did this halftime show for their rodeo. And Larry came out, and he had a horse named Wrong Way Willie. He was the only stunt horse in Hollywood that would fall to the right. They're all trained to fall to the left, but Wrong Way Willie, he fell to the right. That's the name. So you can see him in Blazing Saddles, in fact. So so we were out there doing the show, and hold on.
Yeah. What are you?
My cigar almost went.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, my cigar almost went out.
Oh.
Hey, there's priorities, man.
Yeah, that's right.
So Larry was at the show, and we didn't know it. So he was on his horse, and during the show, he came into the arena on his horse, and he yelled at me. He said, "Breyer, I'm going to run you down." So he came at me with his horse, and everybody out in the arena they knew him, so they just opened fire, right?
Wow.
And the horse fell. and there was silence because, one thing we realized at that moment is you don't shoot a horse at a rodeo.
Yeah. And
the horse fell. And of course, when Larry realized that it was real quiet, there was no applause, he got up and had Ron Wimbilly get up and do a bow. So everybody knew. Everybody knew it was part of the show at that point. So, yeah, that was something. So that was a lot of fun. So, so I did that mostly for fun. We got paid here and there. Mostly, people buy our meals and give us gas money or something like that. We did it for fun. We were a young stunt association, and it was a lot of fun. I stopped doing it when I was 27. I lost 3 very good friends in an airplane wreck. Oh, wow. And we used to do a lot of. They weren't part of our organization. They were an older crowd, but they were good. They were very high, top-notch professionals, very good friends, and they went down in Death Valley, and we did it for about probably another year without them, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah. So it's never the same when you're missing people.
Yeah, so we basically hung up our guns and our whips, and we used to all kinds of gun shows, whip shows, roping, all kinds of stuff. So
right.
Yeah. So after that, during that, because I did it until I was 27, but so my first real paying job where I paid taxes, not voluntarily, obviously, but
the first real job where the government took money from you.
There you go. That's appropriate.
You told them where you were, and they took your money.
That's right. So you got to give me half a second. My cigar went out, and we talked about priorities here. And so let me just
no problem. Do what you got to do.
Back up. Let me roast this puppy back up again because you got to stay with things. So I took this job when I was in high school. I took a printing class, and it always interested me. So I learned printing pretty darn well. And so I took this job.
Printing, like screen printing, or?
Well, I did screen printing. I love silk screen. I love doing that. Yeah. But no, offset printing. Oh, okay. Let it press. The old, where you had to set the hot type letter by letter. That's where I started with setting the hot type. Oh. And then I moved up to regular offset printing. And then so I started doing that. I did that for 2 years for this guy. That's my first real job out of high school. And he expanded. He had 2 shops, and I would run back and forth between the 2 shops. I troubleshoot in one shop more than anything. And then, so I worked for him, and I trained kids for like an ROP program, but it was called COPE. And so he offered that services to the school district. So I did a lot of that. And I was like 18, 19 years old. And I left him because I was his lead operator. I did most of his training. I did everything from darkroom, artwork, all the way through one end to the other.
Wow.
And he went on vacation. I remember he went on vacation for 2 weeks. And he was gone about a week. And I got my paycheck. And there was a note in my paycheck that says, "Thanks for all the hard work. Here's a raise." I got a dime. At that moment, he was without a press operator.
Yeah. Yeah.
I walked out. I was insulted.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard a story like that too, actually. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, and he was on vacation, so he had a problem. Yeah. And I never went back. He never called me or anything. He never went back. I saw him about 20 years later, and we were on good terms because his brother ran his other shop and told him why I quit and that he, should be ashamed. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, so that kind of got me started. I ended up being in the publishing industry for, almost 25 years.
Wow.
And my last 10 years, I managed DALL-E Church Publications. And that was good. It was a good job, great people. And gave me a lot of time to do schooling and stuff like that.
So what did you do there? Was this like book publishing or?
Yeah, mostly it was like liturgical type stuff.
Okay.
And, we had a big crew, ran 2 shifts. I had drivers on the road almost 20 hours a day, 4 days a week. I had people picking up or delivering. And we were on daily deadlines. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But it was a good job. And like I said, it gave me time to do schooling, and gave me time to do other stuff I wanted to do as well. And I worked for the sheriff's department during that time.
Sheriff's
and
department.
I actually I worked on the posse district in San Bernardino County. I was on the posse.
Oh, okay.
And my horse was really getting kind of old for that.
Yeah.
And so I got a Tug Old King, my old horse. When I ran,
what does the sheriff's posse do though? Like, do they call you out when they're trying to find, a bail skip or something?
No, that it's actually horse patrols.
Oh, okay.
So, like you see at the parades and other big things, we assisted search and rescue, because horses can go where a lot of people can't.
Right.
So
they would just call you guys in to kind of manage areas where they couldn't take a bike or a car or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Correct.
That sounds fun.
And it was also good showmanship for the department.
Yeah.
And but my horse was getting kind of old. I was a head wrangler at a place in the mountains, and a gal that I hired brought her horse out from Thousand Oaks with her, and he was 28 years old. He was a thoroughbred. And so when you measure a horse, you measure them in length of hands, 4 inches to a hand.
Right.
So he was 17 2 hands. He was a racehorse when he was younger, and tall horse. But when he got off the track, they sent him to the Flying W for training. The Flying W trains rodeo horses, and he was trained as a roping horse and team penning. So she brought him up so she would have her own horse at this ranch that she worked out with me. When she left employment there, she gave her horse to me. He was 28. She couldn't. He did so well up there in the mountains with thriving. She didn't want to take him away from it, so she just gave him to me.
Wow.
And people think that's old for a horse, but Old King, he was a strong horse. I had him for probably 5 more years, and I rode him on the posse. He outperformed so many other horses. And a lot of people will laugh at this, but being as tall as he was as a thoroughbred, he cut cows, he cut dirt better than most quarter horses I ever had. And he was fabulous. In fact, he was so good that I could put one of my 5-year-old kids on him in the arena, and I could go have lunch and not worry about it. He'd babysit for me.
Oh, wow.
And then when I got on his back, he would give me what I needed, So he was very well trained.
Yeah, that's a good horse.
So he was getting a little old and a little too tired to do the type of riding I needed him to do. So I was having dinner one night with a lieutenant from the department, and he told me that the head sheriff reinstituted the chaplain program. It was the first chaplain program instituted into a sheriff's department in the state back in the 30s.
Huh.
And in the 90s, the sheriff reinstituted it. So I thought, well, that would be perfect. Old King could retire, and I could just stay with the department.
Yeah.
So I did a transfer, and that kind of fell into my lap, because at that point I started doing patrols as well as part of the Special Services Bureau. Oh, hold on a second here. Don't miss that thought. Yeah. Okay. Hold on here.
Yep. No problem.
So anyways, yeah, so that helped get me, that kind of got me started. And, working patrols and everything, when a tragedy took place, they would call me. And then I ended up being on call 24/7, because they realized that the community had something that a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
So when the fire department found out and the hospital found out that I existed, they started utilizing me. Now, the reason why the lieutenant told me about the chaplain program is because I've been involved in ministry since I was 21.
Okay.
I've got all the schooling and everything like that. And in fact, I have a doctorate now. And my master's, my major is in theology and divinity. It's my doctorate in divinity.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, as I started getting more and more of these calls, I realized, some of these areas I'm being called out on, I can handle myself fine, but I would like to be able to dive more into it and offer more to the people that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
one thing I didn't want to do, I started talking to people at the hospitals and stuff like that. I said, talk to me about your experience with chaplains. And as I'm hearing these talking, I think, well, that's not what I want to be. I don't want to be a shoulder for you to cry on, not just a shoulder. I want to be more proactive than that. So I started getting training and going to different schools. And then I ended up getting certified as a trauma specialist through the Association of Traumatic Stress Specialists. And so I got trained in critical incident stress management, crisis response, and all aspects of crisis response. And so in 1999, when I was with the Sheriff's Department, I got a call from the fire department's chief, and we met for lunch. And now, mind you, I worked as kind of like what a reserve officer would have.
Right.
And because I was still working for publishing at this time, that's my bread and butter. So the fire department chief calls me, and they want to set up a chaplaincy program that all the agencies can use out of the fire department, be attached to the fire department. And so through several meetings, we worked it out to where, I would have an emergency vehicle for my responses. I'd be on call 24/7. And I would put together a crisis response team made up of clergy trained in crisis response work.
Huh.
So that's what I did for the fire department. And I left publishing in 1999 and went to work for the fire department. And we had a team of 9 different responders, and they all worked on a rotating schedule.
And so this would have been for what, like natural disasters or, like a building collapse or something, tornado rolls through?
Exactly. Or whenever they need an extra hand. Yeah. And mostly because, so I'll give you an example. One time I'm up the street. I was up in Big Bear, California, and I was having lunch, and I had my radio with me. And technically, I was off, but I always carried my radio because I wanted to know what was going on and what to be prepared for. And up the street was a car wreck, and this guy with the Department of Forestry was out with his family. It was Memorial Day weekend, and his 15-year-old daughter just got a permit. She was driving home, and she crossed in this intersection, and this Jeep was speeding and ran a light and T-boned them. And Mom was in the back seat with her arm out the window, and the Jeep T-boned hit and basically hit mom's arm on impact, and she bled out. Yeah, and she's right there, a touristy town, and a lot of ski resorts up there, and a big lake for skiing and fishing and stuff like that. So she's in this intersection, and fire responds, and so I'm like 100 yards away. So I go on down that intersection. So though the medics are there, fire department's there, everybody's doing their job. You look around, what do you think? There's crowd control is needed, right? Yeah. People are watching all this stuff take place.
Yeah, of course. There's always looky-loos and rubberneckers and everybody who wants to see something.
Right, and not do anything about it, but just watch. Yeah. And of course, today we would have people out there with their cell phones. But but think for a minute about the people out there watching that. That's stuff they got to take home with them. Right. And yeah, that's going to be pretty tragic to see something like that. So that's where I step in.
Yeah, it's interesting that everybody wants to see a blood show, but they don't realize that, you're going to see a blood show. And it's not the same as watching, some slasher movie on TV. Like, it's real life.
Exactly. And people don't realize that until they take it home with them.
Yeah, and it sticks with you.
Yeah, so I was pretty well known in the community by that time. So, had a lot of phone calls, had a lot of work ahead of me for the next week or so. And of course, I spent the night at the hospital with the family. But understanding what is taking place with the crowds, understanding what's taking place with the victims, in this whole situation, it helped me be able to deal with them better. That's what I wanted. I just didn't want to be that shoulder. Right. I want to be proactive. I wanted to understand what tragic or traumatic grief is. So I dove into that. Now, David, I'm one of these people that when I get involved with something, I give it 100%.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're not phoning it in per se.
No.
Ironically, though, that you're phoning it in right now, but you're actually.
Yeah.
you're doing the work.
Yeah.
You're all
right.
in.
You give it 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's why stunt work hurt me so bad.
Yeah. Right.
To the point that where when I was 56, I had a total hip replacement.
Oh wow.
Because you get hurt, arthritis sets in. You got to do something about it,
Yep.
And in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, I had rear and mid foot reconstruction because I had so much foot pain through the years. Finally, they did an MRI and said, "Hey, your foot's messed up. We can fix it. We can fix it." Little did I know that it would take 2 years for a full recovery. And I walked around work with this surgical boot on for 7 months.
Oh, geez.
And it was horrible. It was horrible. Now I've got more metal on my left side than my car does. So anyways, so I learned all the ins and outs of traumatic stress. And a couple of years later, the fire department, the city, the council, the special district council, did budget cuts, and my team was on that cutting block. So what they did, though, there was such a community outcry about the team being cut. They actually set up and gave us some seed money to set up a nonprofit organization, a para-organization, independent of the department that will work alongside of all the emergency agencies.
That's cool.
And so that was set up. It was nonprofit, so it was set up, ran 100% by volunteers. I kept my job at a publishing company, and I had people on my team went with me. We actually set up the rotation bases. We all had our own radios and everything.
So you guys kept it going, just doing it out of the goodness of your heart.
Oh yeah, somebody has to.
Yeah.
So, we ran for 8 years before I shut it down because I couldn't be there 100% of the time, and some of the people working with me became liabilities.
Oh yeah.
And because I couldn't oversee it 100% of the time, I just shut it down, which was a hard decision because people need that. So,
especially something like that you're doing on a volunteer basis. I mean, that's something that you're doing, as a passion project. It's something that you really care about. So yeah, that sucks to have to shut it down.
Yeah, people that know me will tell you that I love people. I like people, and a lot of people don't. In fact, I have a tattoo on my arm of a classic car. I'm big into old cars, and I have a tattoo of one of my classics that I won first place in. And underneath it says, love cars, love people, love life. So, anyways, so when I shut that down, I continued working with the publishing company. And then I left the publishing company. And I got a job at a hospital. It was a trauma center. And I worked there for almost 20 years, 17 and a half years I worked there.
Wow.
And hold on, cigar emergency. So the hospital, I put together a chaplain program for them. And again, I wasn't just your normal hospital chaplain because when I went to work at the hospital, that kept me pretty busy on call 24/7. I was a trauma specialist. I was their chaplain. I was their psycho-oncologist. I got trained as a life coach for cancer patients and their families.
Oh, wow.
So that was, let me tell you, that's a population I absolutely loved working with.
Really?
My wife was an infusion nurse for chemotherapy. She did that for 10 years. We had a lot of the same patients, but that was a great. I love that, doing that more than anything else, dealing with cancer patients. And then so I did that for the facility. I was their living donor advocate. So I worked for the transplant center for the organ donations. And Yeah.
Just trying to get more people to donate blood and organs and whatever else.
Well, when people wanted to donate an organ, I did their screening as a donor to make sure they were actually qualified.
Oh, okay.
Just because you want to donate a kidney doesn't mean that you can't.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to make sure that they weren't being coerced into it, when they paid for it, that there was a genuine desire of theirs.
Yeah.
And so we went through it was an interview process, and a lot of neat people through that organization. In fact, I remember one lady was donating a kidney to her fiance. And once they both got cleared and approved, and the surgery took place, 2 months later, they knocked on my office door and asked if I would officiate their wedding.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool. That was kind of special. So we did that. So working at the hospital there, the ICU and the ER were my two biggest, busiest areas. And trauma was a special thing to me. I had one trauma surgeon tell me that I was a trauma junkie because I was so involved in it, right?
Yeah.
But that sparked something in me dealing with people in the ER and in the ICU. Not everybody thought when things didn't have a good outcome, it was tragic.
Right. Yeah.
And it was very traumatic to a lot of people. But what it did, those people were left in grief. And
you're losing friends and family members, and who knows what.
Oh yeah,
that's not easy.
And so I had a lot of grief training in my trauma work because they go hand in hand. There's different levels of trauma.
Yeah.
And so I started studying more about the aspects of grief, and that is something I just dove into. And gosh. Next thing you know, I got certified as a grief and stress management specialist, and started doing group sessions. I developed an 8-week group session, and I did that for 13 years. And I would do 8 weeks of groups, and I would do it one night a week. And then I'd take 2 weeks off and do another 8 weeks. I'd take 2 weeks off and do another 8 weeks, new groups each time for 13 years.
Jeez.
And yeah. And I did 2 conferences a year on grief, and I absolutely loved it. I did a holiday seminar. It was a 4-hour seminar I did that for about 15 years, and it was just fabulous. I had a great time. My mentor in my grief work, unfortunately, he got taken out by COVID. Oh. And Stephen K., he was just a fabulous guy. Anybody that dealt with the National Bereavement Association knew Stephen, or the Federation of Fire Chaplains. He was an icon. He was a mentor of mine. And so, yeah, I just dove into this. And then in 2018, when I left healthcare and moved out of the state, I went to work at this place out in the valley. I'm up here in Spokane, Washington now. And a sporting goods store. And it was something I'd never done before. They needed someone to run their firearms department, and I was certified in firearms. I used to have a business doing firearms safety training and self-defense training.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
And so through all my training with the fire department, sheriff's department, all that kind of stuff, I also had, I'm a lifetime member of the FBI Citizens Academy. I got a lot of training through the FBI there. So I had, my federal firearms training and all that kind of stuff. So they hired me to run the firearms department, and then they shut the firearms department down after a year because they're just not making money on it. Out here on every street corner, there's a coffee shop as well as a gun shop. Yeah. And the profit margin on a new gun is like 5 to 8% on a new firearm. And so selling 2 a week just doesn't cut it. There's no justification on having them. So they shut that department down. At the same time, the guy that here I am up the current, the guy that was running the bicycle department for this place was leaving, and I'm a bicycle fanatic. I've been playing bicycles since I was 14. I have a shop here at my house. I have 20 bicycles of my own. my wife says I have an illness. So my justification of my road bike and my mountain bike are new. All the other ones are vintage. So, so I have a nice little collection there.
Well, sounds like a perfect match then.
Oh my gosh, it was awesome. So I've been at that company for 5 years, and been working with Charlie for a little over 4 years. Yeah,
Charlie's been there.
Yeah, he has, and so I dove headfirst into the bicycle department, and loving every bit of it. I love working on bicycles. I love selling bicycles. I love dealing with the people. I have fun with them. But here's what got me back into doing the grief work. So randomly, and I mean randomly, I'm over the bike ride. It's probably been 2 years since I dealt with grief or anything like that, right? Totally different lifestyle. Just taking life slower, enjoying it out here. I had this lady come up to me, and she's buying bicycles for her and her kids. And we were just talking, and she'd tell me, she's a nurse for the prison system and everything like that. But she told me about her husband who recently died. Yeah, well, he died. You guys are young. And he died of cancer. And we talked, and I didn't really share with her right away about my background. I just let her talk.
Yeah.
And I heard her. I listened to her heart, and it did something to me. And I just kind of put that on the back burner, right? And then about 6 months later, this guy's over there looking at these bicycles, and he has 2 kids in his shopping cart. And he says, I'm looking for a bike. I said, well, what kind of riding are you interested in? He goes, well, I don't know. I got to do something to keep myself healthy to take care of these guys. My wife just died.
Oh, wow.
I thought, wow. You just don't offer that up to anybody, right?
Yeah.
It's like, do I have a sticker on my forehead that I'm safe, talk to me?
Maybe. Some people. I mean, some people have that, man. Jeez, I've met people that, I've opened up and shared stuff too that I'm like, why the hell am I telling you this?
yeah, exactly.
Some people just have that vibe.
I guess so. So, we talked for a while. I listened to him. But that happened not just at work, like in the grocery store. I remember I was in the grocery store one time, and I'm 6'1", and I was taller, but the doctor told me to cut down. And but this little old lady's down this aisle. She can't reach something off the top shelf, so I walked over to her. I said, "Would you like to borrow some height?" She goes, I would really appreciate it if you get that down for me. So I reach over and I grab it and I hand it to her. And she goes, it's so hard functioning in life without my husband. I look at it, she goes, my husband died about 6 months ago. I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. So that has happened to me several times. It's like, okay, stuff like this just doesn't happen.
Signs
Why is
from
it happening?
The universe.
Yes. So somebody told me, you got to do a podcast. I was talking to somebody about this, and they were asking me questions about grief and stuff like that. They said, you got to do a podcast. And I kind of blew it off. But over a year's time, I had so many different people telling me about that.
Yeah.
And I do miss doing the groups. I'll say that. So I looked into doing podcasts. And my brother, he's really techie and that kind of stuff. And he was encouraging me to do that kind of stuff. Because, in ministry work, before I started in chaplaincy work, I did a lot of stuff on world religions and talking about world religions and talking to people about cults and that kind of stuff. He always wanted me to do a podcast on that end of stuff. But this is my passion,
Yeah.
So I looked into it. So I started doing the podcast on grief and started a website up for it and everything. And so that's what got me into it. So out of everything I've done in life, and I've done a few, a lot of stuff, it was at the same time, obviously. But grief that's where my passion is.
Grief counseling.
Bicycling and grief. Yeah, bicycling. So being a certified grief and stress management specialist, bicycling is a stress reducer. I love bicycling.
Oh, yeah.
I'm one of those crazy people. You know, my sister and I, every year, we used to ride for LAX to SeaWorld. It's 132 miles. It's 132 miles.
Jeez.
And so I know a few things about bikes.
Round trip, or did you have someone pick you up there?
Yeah, it was one way.
Oh, okay.
And so and we'd have somebody pick us up and take us back. And, so I was off my bike for 2 years after my foot surgery. I just recently got back into it, because after my foot surgery and going through COVID and everything, the guy I used to ride with in California, I miss him a lot. He's out in Arkansas now. And we used to ride constantly, mountain bikes and road bikes. We used to do these organized tours all the time. Tour de Palm Springs and Tour de Big Bear and all that. So I
remember the last time I was on a bicycle.
Yeah. I'm actually thought about doing a bicycle class because there's so many people that want to buy bicycles and they haven't rode them for a long time. They don't know a lot of the ins and outs. There's actually proper shifting to do.
Yeah.
You got to be fitted right for bikes. I tell people, bicycling should be a positive experience.
Right.
And if you're not fitted properly for a bicycle, you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I used to be way into that stuff, when I was younger in my teens and stuff like that. And boy, once I got my driver's license, that just went out the window.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to go on a date on a bicycle,
Yeah, that it is.
So when I got into bicycle, it's kind of a neat story. I lived in a horse town. I had a horse. I rode the horse everywhere, but I wanted a bicycle. And the Heart Association came to my school, and they were doing this cyclothon event. And whoever turned in it was where you got sponsors. They had to sign up on a sponsor sheet and everything. And the thing was, whoever turned in the most money in that event won a new bicycle.
Nice.
So I entered the event. And I borrowed somebody's bicycle. They kept breaking down on me. The seat was stripped, so every time I stood up to pedal, the seat would spin, I would goose myself. The chain kept coming off. So, but I pushed through. I was 14, and I rode 82 miles that day.
Wow.
And I won the award for the new bicycle. I turned in the most money turned in the event. And I also won a trophy for turning in the most money ever turned in any of their events.
Huh.
So, and my dad was a strong-arm guy, okay? He took my sponsor sheet to work, and he had a lot of his guys sponsor me, and one of them was a professional bicyclist who gave me a lot of great tips. So I won the bicycle. But here I am in a horse town with a bicycle. And,
so you're the odd man out.
We had blacksmiths. We didn't have bicycle mechanics.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to fix my bike, man. So that kind of fell into where I am today as a bike tech. And but on the grief aspect of it, doing these podcasts has been fantastic. I've enjoyed it. And you don't always sit with somebody that is going through grief. You're talking into a microphone.
Right. Yeah.
But I know I keep telling myself there's people out there hearing this, and that's what's important.
Yeah. You just hope that the information that you're sharing is hopefully hitting somebody's ears and making a difference wherever possible.
Right. Right. So, I look at my analytics occasionally on Spotify's platform, and, I got people around the world listening. I got people in New Zealand and Africa,
nice.
Canada. Yeah. So I know it's through word of mouth or somebody just doing a search up for grief.
Yeah.
And so what I did, I also put together a website. It kind of coincides with the podcast. There's stuff on there about grief. Obviously, it's an ongoing project, as most websites like this are. There's links to the podcast on there as well. I just found out last night there's a couple of dead links which need to be fixed.
Yeah. Yep.
But what's nice about with like Spotify and the other platforms is when you find the one episode, it lists all of the episodes. So that's a good thing. So I'm working on doing online groups as well.
Oh, really?
So a lot of people they don't have the ability to always leave the house for 2 hours a night. And you think about it, if I just did groups here locally, I'm missing a whole lot of people.
Yeah, you're
that could
missing
benefit
out
from
on a
it.
whole lot.
Right. So if I do groups online and still limit the group sizes, I could do groups a couple nights a week.
Yeah, but you're reaching a much broader audience.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And it's not always a homogeneous group, because grief can affect you. So grief is what we go through when we experience loss.
Right.
Loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of a spouse, a best friend, a dog. There's a lot of aspects to it. When I was doing my group sessions, I had one lady come to my group who was in the middle of a divorce. And to her knowledge, her marriage was going great. And then one day at work, she got served with divorce papers.
Wow.
Yeah, she came home and all of her husband's stuff is gone.
Jeez. That's
So
worse
there's
than getting a text or a Post-it note.
Right? Yeah, I was like, on the refrigerator under the magnet, it's a "I divorce you" note, right?
Yeah.
Or your divorce papers. So,
It's like that Patty Loveless song, "You Don't Even Know Who I Am."
Yeah, exactly. Right.
He comes home and everything's just there, and she left a note.
Yeah, right. So, so here she is in a group of people who have lost spouses because they died. And so it's not always a homogeneous group, but she still did what she had to do.
Yeah.
And what the format I use is, it's not just all about talking. That's an aspect, but that's one of the small aspects of it, because there's a lot of work involved in grief. And so I give people work to work through the grief, because most people, they don't want to talk about it, but they want to deal with it.
Right.
You can't do one without the other.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to think about it. So I have exercises, I have homework, I have teaching, to where there's teaching, there's time for sharing, and there is homework. And I need to get people to think about it and to deal with the grief. And not dealing with it is not a way to deal with it. It's like this. Grief is like this. Let's say you bought a shirt and you rolled it up and stuck it in the back of your drawer in your dresser, and you forgot about it. And a year later, you found it and you pulled it out, and it's the same as it was when you put it in there.
Yeah.
That's grief.
Yeah. If you don't do anything with it, then it's never going to go.
It doesn't change. That's right. It doesn't change. It's right where you left it.
Yep.
So here's an example. Some people will put their grief away with alcohol.
Yeah.
And they'll just drink themselves to oblivion. And when they decide to get off and stop drinking, and they pull their grief out, it is the same place as where they left it.
Yep.
So grief doesn't change in that aspect. So you're starting 2 years later. You're starting from square one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, people don't realize that whether you like it or not, you've got to talk about things and you got to get them out and you have to work through them. But I mean, exactly. I've talked on this show before that what that takes is vulnerability, and that's very hard for people. Because nobody wants to feel weak, and you always feel weak when you have to open yourself up and talk about things that you don't want to talk about.
Right. And that's really a tough one.
Yeah.
So my program, my podcast is called Healing with Hope. But my program, the website, it's called The Phoenix Method. So
thephoenixmethod.org.
Correct. So what the heck does the Phoenix have to do with grief? Now,
rising anew from the ashes.
Very good. You got it.
Yeah.
So the mystical bird of change.
Yep.
So what the Phoenix does is, after his life is over, he's a very, very beautiful bird. But when his life is over, he spontaneously combusts as a ball of flame, burns into ashes. Out of that pile of ashes comes a more beautiful bird that ever went into it.
Yep.
That's grief, providing you deal with it correctly. So grief is something we just don't ignore.
Right.
Grief is something we have to burn through. It's tough. It's hard. And it's been explained many times that I feel like I'm in hell. So grief is something you have to, definitely, it's something you have to burn through.
Yep. You got to break yourself down in order to build yourself anew.
That's right. And grief is a journey. So this journey, as you're burning through it, when you come out the other side depends upon your journey. Are you going to come out something more beautiful than what you went into it? Because your journey will dictate that. So in the Phoenix method, we come up with this journey to help you through the journey. And it's a method. So when I first started getting into grief, I found this book and I just stumbled across it. It's called The Quest of the Phoenix. And it's one guy's quest to get through grief after his wife got massacred. Huh. And he was in India, import-export business in India, and they got ransacked. His caravan of people leaving his office got ransacked by what we would call pirates, but more on the land. And his wife got shot and got killed. They were only been married 6 months, madly in love with her, and he had to find a way of dealing with this. And so this is his way. The Phoenix was his way of working through the quest of the Phoenix. I read that book and I contacted him. We've talked a couple of times. And I was fascinated by his journey. And after talking with him, he gave me permission to use some of his techniques. And so I incorporated some of his techniques into the method that I put together. And obviously I've studied this so in depth that I pulled from a lot of different resources to come up with this method.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've done hospice work. I've done obviously hospital work, cancer work. And so this method I have found for me and for people I deal with seems to be pretty effective. I have met some fabulous people through this. I still have contact with. And so, as you can tell, it's passion of mine. Out of everything I've done, that and bicycle are my passions, okay? One I get to do for a living, one I get to do because I enjoy it, and people are important.
Yeah, and that's very special because you know what? There's a lot of people out there who are not doing something that they're passionate about. You know, I mean, that's why I call them grinders, because we're all doing a grind. We're just eking out a living, making a paycheck. Most people are just doing what they got to do to pay the bills, and that sucks.
Yeah, and here's the thing: people are grinders. We can't get by in life without them.
Oh, yeah,
they might not, and they're doing what they do because they're good at it.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean they enjoy it.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's one of the founding bases of this show is, yes, you know, we are grinders and we may not be passionate about what it is that we're doing, but I mean, man, you know, wait staff, you know, taxi cab drivers, plumbers, construction workers. I mean, anybody that's out there just getting dirty and doing it, you know, this entire economy and the entire world functions on the backs of you people, you know?
Right. Exactly. And so, and here's the thing I would like to say to our grinders is that you're doing what you do for a reason. You might not like it, but there's an aspect of it that you do like, or you wouldn't be good at it.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to step back and take a look at it about what we're grinding for. What about is it? What is it that we enjoy about that? It's the smallest aspect of it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like people are having a horrible day, or they see life in the negative aspect because life took a crap on them. So they don't enjoy a whole lot. So, but what people don't realize is that in every negative, there's a positive.
True.
And we don't focus on a positive. We don't look for the positive because we're so miserable with life.
Yeah.
So we take a minute and we sort through all that crap we're dragging around. We all have our luggage, our baggage, right? But if we look through that baggage and get rid of the stuff that's not doing us any good, we're just dragging it around and it's dead weight, but gives us a reason to be negative. But in all that baggage, there's positive that we're not looking for because we focus so much on the negative. Let's look for something positive and let's focus on it. The laws of focus say that what you focus on, you'll find. What you focus on, you find. If you focus on the negative, you're going to find it. If you focus on that positive, you're going to find it. And sometimes once we find it, we got to exploit it. We got to really do something with it. There's a saying, it's called, in the Greek language, there's something called eustress, eu meaning bad, and dis meaning bad. We all know that when you diss somebody, it's a bad thing.
Right.
So there's something called distress, is a bad stress. And then eu is good. EU is good. So there's eustress. There's distress and eustress. So in our distress, we need to look for the eustress. There's always a silver lining to whatever it is that's black.
Right. Well, and to me, a silver lining would be, any time you fail or you make a mistake, I mean, you have to be learning something. So if you take a step back and instead of being stressed out about whatever the problem is, take a step back, focus on it, think about it, you can always find something to be positive about. Like, okay, well, at least now I know when I do this happens and I'm not going to do that again. I mean, there's your positive.
Exactly. And people get so upset when they fail. But failure is a positive thing.
Yeah, failure is the number one best way to learn anything in my book.
It's a stepping stone to success.
Yeah.
And
I can't even count how many times I've messed something up or failed and felt like a total moron. But, the older I get, the more I learn, like, okay, well, I won't do that again.
Right. So as a kid, did you ever stick a bobby pin in a wall socket?
No, I never did. But
please say yes, David.
No, I had too many friends that did that, and I didn't ever have to do that one to learn what happens.
Right, but you learn from it, right?
Yeah,
it's a negative thing. You learn from it.
Yeah.
So it's the same aspect, So here, and this might seem menial in comparison, but a simple example is this: a few weeks ago, a guy brought a bike in for some service, and his crank was stripped out. His pedal fell off. His crank was stripped out, so I had to replace the entire crankset. His bike was old; they don't make it anymore, so I had to find a comparable crankset. So I put it on, and I couldn't get the front derailleur to shift through the three rings, the three, and it would only shift for the middle one to the top one. I couldn't get it to go all the way. And, I've been playing with bikes for 40 years, man. I couldn't figure it out. So I stopped. I said, okay, I can't let this win. So I put it away and worked on something else. And I thought about it. I went back the next day, and all I had to do, is the bottom bracket that your crankshaft connects to.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the bike. I just had to take it out and move it like a 16th of an inch. Huh. And it worked beautifully.
Yep. Small adjustments.
Small adjustments.
Small adjustments can make big changes.
Exactly. When you fail at something, go back to where you had hope and make a small adjustment.
Yep.
And there we are. It brings us through it.
Well, I feel like that's something that a lot of people do is, when they do decide that they want to change something or they want to make a difference in their own life or somebody else's or, what have you, they focus too much on the big picture and they go for gold, like right out of the gate. And, a lot of times you're not going to get anywhere that way. You need to break it down, take it in baby steps, like start somewhere small, make a change there.
Right.
And then once you've got that, okay, now move on to the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing until before you know it, you've got the entire big picture.
Exactly.
If you try to go for everything all at once, man, you're tackling a mountain with a shovel,
Yeah. And it's and that's how grief is.
Yeah.
We feel hopeless. we feel like there's no hope, and therefore we convince ourselves that we're just stuck in this pit.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. Now, granted, some cases are a lot more difficult than others. Some people really get stuck in their grief, and it takes a lot of work. It takes more work than a lot of other people. Some people will just put grief off because of guilt, what we call survivor's guilt.
Right.
And when they finally get around to dealing with it, it has become complicated. And it's not just complicated grief for them, but it's complicated grief for the person helping them work through it. I don't call myself a grief counselor. I think I do try to do a little bit more than an average counselor would. So, but yeah, I think that it all ties together with grief, because when people feel that they're hopeless, they got to go back to where they felt halfway functional and make an adjustment.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, if you just sit around in it and do nothing, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. And you can have a fun, fulfilling life still.
Yeah,
I've known a lot of people who have gone on. They've gotten married, remarried after grief, and they always say, "I would never get remarried." It's a matter of working through the grief, because you see, it's not about, "Oh, I'll never love again." You'll never love like you did that person again,
right?
But the relationship is going to be different,
right?
And
yeah, because every single person is different. So there's no way that you'll ever love anybody else the same way that you loved that person that you lost. It's just not possible.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that you won't love.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I have learned a life worth of lessons from these people I have helped.
I bet.
I remember so many of them so vividly, and what they've gone through and how they've conquered and just grew to shine. To where I was so impressed with them. It's like, yeah, gosh, if I ever have to cross that bridge, I hope I come out like they did.
Yeah, right.
It just, yeah. I'll tell you, but some of the people, when I dealt with cancer patients, like I said, that's one of my favorite populations, is the patients, the families. Some of the patients I've just helped with their stress through it, and gain a positive aspect through their journey. Some of them recovered, some of them didn't. One guy I became such good friends with. It turned out he lived down the street from me, and he was an expert at Shotokan karate. He had several dojos across this, and in fact, I used to practice martial arts, and I remember I went to the I can't remember what year it was. I want to say 97 World Shotokan Championships, and I didn't know it. I didn't know him then, but it was a great championship. And Ray Dahlke's Studios was there, and he was there also. And I remember who won the championships and everything. But when I met him, he was actually there. I remember. He said, we had to have met if you were sitting here and you did this. We had to have met and crossed paths. We became such good friends. He only lived, from when I met him, he lived about 3 months. And we became so close. I cried when he died. And he was just such a good friend.
Yeah.
And it was like we knew each other our whole lives. We just immediately bonded. And so I had this Roadster, this old 66 Datsun Roadster that I restored. And I got a call from his hospice nurse. Now, this guy, his name was Randy. He beat the odds of surviving so many times. He should have been dead 5 times over. But he had such a positive attitude. He taught the local police department, he taught hand-to-hand combat self-defense for them.
Oh, wow.
But he had such a positive attitude that he kept beating the odds. The doctor says, "Oh, he's got 24 hours to live." He would live 3 months later and laugh in their face. And I got a call from his hospice nurse that, "Hey, Randy's close. He wants to see you." So I went over to his house. I'm sitting down on his bed talking to him. And he says, "You know what I really want to do?" I go, "What?" He goes, "I want to go for a ride in your Roadster."
Nice.
So the next day, yeah, right? So here's a guy on his deathbed. He wants to go ride my convertible. So I go over and I pick him up. And he grew up, we're driving around town. He tells me that he grew up on the racetrack at Riverside International Raceway. And if you ever watched Ford versus Ferrari, you'll know the Riverside Raceway because it's featured in that movie.
I think I've had that on my list to watch, but I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. I was so involved with cars and races. I got so many people in that movie I've either met or know of.
Huh.
So, he was telling me his backyard was right on the racetrack. He used to sit on the roof of his house and watch the races. And one day he told me that as we were driving, he goes, "You know who my favorite driver was?" I go, "Who?" He goes, "Tony Adamowicz, who drove the Eagle, the Gurney Eagle." I said, "I know Tony. He's a good friend of mine." He goes, "Really?" So at that time, the Riverside International Automotive Museum was there. It was a museum dedicated to Ontario Motor Speedway and Riverside International Speedway. So I took him to the museum. Tony's car is there. And so he gets out, I take a picture of him standing next to Tony's car. And so he was in heaven, right?
Yeah, I bet.
So our day ends. I take him home. I go home and I call Tony. Tony next day aired to him an autographed picture.
Wow.
To us. Yeah, that meant so much to Randy that when he died, Tony's picture was on his casket.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a great experience, So sometimes, you're not supposed to get close to your patients, but I couldn't help it. Randy and I became, I would say, best friends for the short time we had together.
Yeah. And
being able to do that for him and seeing the difference it made in his life for what time he had left, that was a milestone for me.
Yeah, sometimes you can't help it, man. You just click with people.
Yeah. So, cases like that, situations like that, it's a hard thing to do, dealing with people, but it's so rewarding at the same time. So if there's anybody listening that, whether it's grief counselor or whatever, that you're on the fence about doing something you have a passion for, just close your eyes and dive in, take that plunge, get involved. Even if it's part-time, do what you think you need to do and see what happens, see if it comes into something you can do full-time. If not, giving your all into it, it's going to make a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah.
30 years of this, I just got my retirement badge from crisis response work, 30 years in it. If you're into it, let's say you're into it for 10 years and you make a difference in one person's life, you did your job. That was,
Yeah, that's all it takes, man. As long as you're touching at least one person.
Yeah, that's it. So here I am doing bicycles for a living. Well, not just bicycles. I do everything involved in the store. If something needs to be done, I do it, But and Charlie will tell you that, there's certain things I can't do. My back is so trash. As much as I would love to move a treadmill, I can't. I can help, but I just like dealing with people, and so doing retail work. First time I ever did retail, and I absolutely love it. Anything I can do to help people out, I'll do it.
Nice.
But, yeah.
That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It's good talking to you.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I feel like I did most of the talking here, but
yeah, that's all right, man. That's what it's about.
But I enjoy. I've done so much in my life. Everything from classic cars to bicycles, and so I'll tell you real quick. In high school, I went to high school in the 70s. Okay. And, they say if you were in the 70s and you remember you weren't there. Right.
I've heard that.
So, yeah. So, as far as cars go, bicycles were a passion, but I drove a 59 Edsel in high school.
Ooh. And
everybody knew me by my Edsel, right? And when I got rid of the Edsel, I had a 56 Mercury. I had old pickup trucks and, my old Datsun. I was on the board of directors for the Datsun Heritage Museum. I was so much into it. And I used to do car shows. I did 2 car shows a year.
Wow.
And in fact, they're still going today. That I spent 6 months setting up each car show. And I had big sponsors like Lucas was one of my big sponsors, Lucas Oil, Kenda Tires, the Tire Rack. I just had some really decent sponsors, Rock Auto. And so cars were a big passion of mine. In fact, now I have a 73 F100. And it's a rust bucket. It's a rust bucket, man. It has a 302 in it. It is. But, I can see the street, like I'm driving down the freeway. I look between my feet and there's a solid line, And, but it's a rust bucket, but the engine and the drivetrain are as strong as it was when it was new.
Nice.
And I named it Old Blue because it's blue with a lot of rust.
Yeah.
And so I love cars. I love bicycles. My bicycle collection, I have a 49 Monarch Deluxe. I absolutely love that bicycle. And here's something funny. Before I moved to Spokane, I was up here visiting our kids, and they moved up here out of high school. And we're walking through this Union Gospel Mission thrift store, and here's this bicycle for $800, and it's a 49 Monarch. I'm looking at it; it's missing a few things, it's a little rough. So I made them an offer like $400 for it, and they took it. But I'm from California. I'm not getting a bicycle on a freaking airplane. So I break it down and I ship it home. It costs as much to ship it as I paid for it. I get it all together. I get it usable. I'm riding the heck out of it. And a year later, I moved to Spokane. And I bring it back with me. And I should have just left it here with my kid in his garage.
Right. So paying $400 to ship it?
Yeah. And then I put it in a pot and move it back up here. So I have this Triumph bicycle I bought in an estate sale. It's kind of rough. I got a lot of work to do on it, but Triumph, as they made motorcycles in the early years, they also made bicycles.
Yeah.
And it was made in Nottingham, England, and shipped over here. So I stole that. And so I got a lot of interesting bikes. So, again, it's a passion.
Yeah.
And,
Triumph motorcycles are pretty rad.
Oh, gosh, I love the Triumph bike.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. Through all my car stuff, I actually got to be very good friends with a guy named John Morton. Okay, a lot of people know that name in the race car industry. He's the one that drove the 240Z and the Datsun Roadster to international fame on the racetrack back in the early 70s. He's 80 now. He raced up to about 2 years ago. He was still racing. Fabulous guy. But he had a Triumph motorcycle. And I used to go to town, so I used to just love seeing that thing. And he posed. So C.S. Lewis I don't know if you know C.S. Lewis. He was an old philosopher, Christian philosopher, if you will. Yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
He wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Everybody knows him from that. Yeah. So he used to say that God sees people like this. When you go to an old trash dumpster and you see this old broken down lamp that's just decayed and just broken to pieces, you pull it out, you set it on the ground, you look at it, and you envision what it would look like if it was restored. Well, when you pull that thing out of the trash can and set it on the ground, that God sees you already restored. Okay? That's how God sees us. Well, people like John, when he buys old motorcycles and the old Whizzer motorcycles, he has a whole collection of Whizzers. He sees them all broken and decrepit when he buys them, and he looks at them, and he sees them the way they're meant to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's how I am with cars and bicycles.
He doesn't see a broken down pile of junk.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's how I see old cars and old motorcycles or old bicycles. So I don't restore old bicycles. I make them usable again. I think they deserve to keep the character and the patina that they've earned through the years. Yeah. And it's funny because I tell people, bicycles have feelings. Give me a break. So, I've had a colorful life. Yeah, and I feel, God said he's given us life to the fullest. I took that and ran with it. I've lived life to the fullest.
Good. It's important. Yeah. Well, so real quick one more time. So your podcast is Healing with Hope.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And your website is thephoenixmethod.org.
That is correct. And if you're going to listen to the podcast, please do it over Spotify, although it is available on all platforms.
Yes. Same with Guys in the Garage.
That's
Spotify,
right.
Spotify.
That's right. That's right. When I heard about you, I found you on Spotify.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think Spotify and Anchor are great platforms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like the fact that they don't mess with you too much, if at all.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I said, we've had issues with YouTube thus far, and yeah, Spotify hasn't done a dang thing. They're just like, okay, do what you want, have fun.
Yeah. And, I've thought about YouTube and TikTok. I've had a lot of people tell me I should do TikTok with my grief stuff. And there's just I've hesitated. There's so much controversy behind it.
Yeah,
and I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, people keep asking me to do TikTok stuff, and I'm like, you know what? Google and the government and China already steals enough of my info. I don't need to just hand it to them.
Yeah. I'll tell you. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if Charlie still does TikTok or not, but he's freaking funny on there.
Charlie has TikTok.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that?
I did not know that. So I may have to get it now just so I can see his.
I don't know if he's still on there or not, but I'll tell you what. When I first saw him on there, it's pretty freaking funny, man. It's a side of him that I don't always see.
Oh, Charlie.
Usually when I'm hanging with Charlie, it's a work relationship or I'm poking fun at him about something. But yeah, it is good to see that side of him.
Charlie on TikTok. Boy, Chris, you just opened a can of worms. Thanks, bud.
Okay. I'm going to listen to your next podcast with him.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, definitely. So.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to your future episodes. I enjoy your podcast, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to have to check out yours too.
All right.
That's the first time I've had another podcaster on here. It's pretty fun.
Well, yeah, definitely. And appreciate you letting me just share my life. A lot of people only know bits and pieces of it, And
yeah,
there's a lot. There's a lot there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Everybody always, before they come on here, or, if I ask somebody to come on, they would say, well, I don't even know what I would talk about. And, and I say, you say that, and then as soon as they get on and they open up, man, it's just a river of like, oh yeah, I remember I did this once, but okay, see. Yeah.
Yeah. There's more to people's lives than they realize.
Oh yeah. 'Cause in the moment, they don't even remember, but then once they take a minute to actually start thinking back, it's like, oh yeah, I've done this and I've done this. And it's like, really? Wow, that's crazy. I wouldn't have even thought that about you.
And there's so much of it can be intertwined, or you did one thing and it helped you lead you, like in my case, with the sheriff's department.
Right.
If I didn't have my experience with the sheriff's department, I probably wouldn't be doing what I do today, because everything leads you down a different road.
Yep. Yeah, everything builds, one thing into another.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So,
yeah. David,
I appreciate you, my friend, and thank you for letting me share my life.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing, man. Thanks again.
You bet. One day I hope to sit down and have a cigar and a glass of whiskey with you.
We will definitely have to put that on the docket, man. We will do it.
Yeah, and you can invite Charlie if you want to.
Sure, yeah. We got to watch his TikToks together.
That's what we ought to do. We ought to just surprise him one time and have one of your sessions with a big screen of TikTok videos.
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
Okay, buddy.
All right, thanks, Chris.
All right, you have yourself a good one.
You too. And all you grinders out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on grinding.